Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege to have you guys joining me here today as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, some television, maybe a little bit of NFL football, a little bit of MMA, but mostly we're here to talk about movies and the things that we love about them so much. I'm really glad that you guys are here today. Now, got a few things going to do today, but I want to make an announcement here first, okay? So, here's an announcement, building off the announcement I made yesterday. I want to remind you guys that starting on Monday, that's this coming Monday, the John Campea Show, and I'm doing this in response to a lot of the requests you guys have sent in to me. A lot of you guys have requested to move the John Campea Show live back to its earlier time. So, starting on Monday, the John Campea Show will be at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 11 a.m. on the East Coast. So, and if you live in another time zone, you figure out the time zone difference. But it's going to be 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's Los Angeles time, 11 a.m. New York time or East Coast time. So that starts on Monday. Also, the John Campea Show is going to be getting a little bit shorter because here's what's happening. I have noticed that the shows have been getting just a little bit too long. I never wanted the John Campea Show to be over an hour long, let alone an hour and 10, hour and 20. Hell, even a couple times went to an hour and 30 minutes. So this is what we're going to do. The John Campea Show is going to be tightened up. It's going to be probably anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes an episode. That means I'm going to be taking just a couple of live questions every day starting on Monday. I'm still going to take a whole ton of live questions today. Don't worry about it. But starting Monday, I'm only going to be taking a couple of live questions, and the show is going to be much shorter, focusing more on the movie news stories and on the email topics that you guys write into me. And then I'll just take a couple of live questions. Pardon me. But what we are also starting on Monday is I've had a lot of you guys mention to me over the months that, you know, having a live call-in show or a live, you know, Twitter or live question show is great too. So, starting on Monday, for a few weeks, we're going to try a test period of a new show, which is going to be John Campea Live, at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 7 p.m. East Coast time. And we're going to do a 1-hour show every day just talking about the things you guys want to talk about, which is just all live questions. Live questions from start to finish. And that's going to be at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every single day. And I'm not quite sure what the name of the show. Maybe you guys can give me some suggestions as to what the name of the show should be. I don't know whether it should just be John Campea Live or John Campea PM. I thought about John Campea PM, but then people are going to say, no, people are going to think that stands for post-menstrual. I don't want people to think I'm having post-menstrual syndrome. No, there's just too many memes to be done there. But I am going to be doing that new show. So again, starting Monday, 8 a.m. is going to be the Pacific Standard Time. 8 a.m. is going to be the John Campea Show, and 4 p.m. is going to be what I'm tentatively calling right now John Campea Live. And Tuesdays will still have Star Wars Talk Tuesdays. Fridays, later today, will be Hero Weekly and all that kind of stuff. But just wanted to give you guys the heads up that we're going to be trying that for a while and see what you guys think about it. Maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. That's the great thing about trying new things, is that you don't have to do them if they don't work. And if you guys don't like it, we'll scrap it and go back to something else. But I have a feeling it might work, so we're going to give that a shot. Okay, here's how today's show is going to go. I have picked out 4 topics that you guys have emailed in to me. Now, how do you email in a topic or a question for the John Campea Show? It's real simple. You simply email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. That's john@thejohncampeashow.com. Send on in those questions and make sure you put the word topic in the subject line. Once again, make sure you put the word topic in the subject line and let me know what it is you guys want to talk about. And of course, guys, as always, keep those emails to 90 words or less. The shorter, the better. If they're much longer than that, I can't use them on the show. And then in the second half of this show, we're just going to be taking your live questions. Obviously, the best way to guarantee you'll get your question on the show is to use the super chat. If I still have some time after that, which I rarely do, I will go over to Twitter. So, with that out of the way, let's get on to the first. And by the way, just reminding everybody, I still have the old bronchitis. Probably will have this cough for the next couple of weeks, so I apologize in advance for the fact that I'm going to have halls and lozenges in my mouth and I'm going to be sipping on tea through the show. I do apologize, but it is what it is, or else I'll be coughing and hacking and wheezing through the whole show. All right, first question today comes to us from Mo. And Mo writes, Hey, John, wishing you the best. Thank you so much, Mo. I was wondering if Netflix, HBO, and now Hulu, etc., pays actors, directors, or anyone who worked on a film certain revenue, like the way Spotify pays the artist 10 cents for each song a person hears it. Just wanted to know if streaming services do the same. All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. And it's a relevant question because we are now moving into an era where the streaming services like Amazon, like Google Play, like Hulu, like Netflix are becoming more and more prevalent. So the question becomes, okay, wait a minute. If services like Spotify or other music streaming services pay the rights holders or the musicians, whatever, a certain percentage or a certain fee every time the song is played, does the same thing happen with Netflix? And the answer, or the other streaming services, the answer is mostly no, in a way, yes. So here's the thing. Amazon and Hulu and Netflix and these streaming services, they don't have any kind of an agreement with the actors or directors or, musicians or whatever. They have no agreement with those people. Netflix and Amazon and Hulu, they do not pay a single cent to actors or directors or whatever because they have no agreement with them. What they do have is an agreement with the rights holder of the movie or the TV show, whatever it is. Let's just call it the content, whether it's a movie or an episode of a TV show or whatever, the content. Something like Hulu, Amazon, Google, Netflix, what they have is an agreement with the rights holders of the content. So let's say, for example, I'm the producer and the owner of the rights to the movie version of course, the one you've all been waiting for, Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone. And so I make the movie, Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone. I hire a bunch of actors and a director and whatever to work on the movie. And then I launch my movie on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon. Now what happens is Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, all these guys here, they pay me. I'm the one they have an agreement with because the content belongs to me. So they pay me. Now what happens after that is that depending on the agreement that I have as the content producer and the content owner, depending on the agreement I have with the actors or directors or whatever who are in Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone, I pay them a percentage of the revenue that I generate. So let's say, for example, for argument's sake, let's say Jake Gyllenhaal goes, you know what, Matt Reeves? I'd love to be Batman, but I got an opportunity to be in Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone, and obviously I would be an idiot if I didn't appear in Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone. So let's say Jake Gyllenhaal stars in my movie, and I make an agreement with him that I'll pay him, X amount of dollars plus, 2% or whatever revenues the movie generates. Well, then what would happen is I put my movie on Hulu. Hulu doesn't have to pay Jake Gyllenhaal. Hulu makes an agreement with me and they pay me a certain amount of money. Then in accordance with my agreement with Jake Gyllenhaal, I then pay Jake Gyllenhaal a certain percentage of whatever revenue I get, whether I get the revenue from Hulu, from Amazon Prime, from Netflix, from whoever. So that's the long answer. The short answer is no. Amazon, Hulu, Google, Netflix, they don't pay the individual directors or actors a certain percentage. That's all up to the rights holder and the owner of the content. And that's who that these services have an agreement with. So hopefully I didn't make that as clear as mud. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Chad Reeves. Thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter, Chad. Hey, John, love the show daily, even when we don't see eye to eye on topics. But that's the most fun part. What fun would it be if we agreed on everything? With supporting roles in The Post and Disaster Artist, as well as already leading Glow, do you think we're on the verge of seeing Alison Brie as a major A-list talent? Been a fan of hers since Community. All right, thanks a lot for the question, Chad. And yeah, what a hell of a year for Alison Brie. What a hell of a year for Alison Brie. And by the way, if you guys, I forgot to bring the picture up here. Give me 1 second. But if you guys have not seen Glow, you really should. Now, Glow is a Netflix series starring Alison Brie it's based on a true story. It's not completely true, but it's based on the true story of this women's wrestling federation that got going decades ago. And Alison Brie plays the lead in the movie. And or in the show, it's just, I think it's like 10 episodes, something like that. And Mark Maron's in it, and Mark Maron is fantastic in it. But Alison Brie is having a killer last little bit for her career, right? Is she on the verge of becoming a major A-list star? I don't know. Honestly, I'm going to guess no. But John, you just said she's so incredibly talented. She is incredibly talented. What I see happening with Alison Brie is not necessarily being the next A-list star, like not the next Scarlett Johansson who everybody's looking to lead their movies. Instead, what I think she's on the cusp of becoming, if she's not already right now, is the next, actress in Hollywood that everybody wants in their projects, not necessarily the lead though. She's shown she is so talented and so reliable. And unlike some actors or actresses in this business, when she's in the movie or a television show, she elevates the material because she's just that gifted. She's just that talented. I think a lot of people are going to be lining up to get her in their projects. Maybe not necessarily as the lead, maybe not necessarily as an A-list star, but I think you're going to see Alison Brie be as busy in this business as she wants to be over the next couple of years. I really do. If I'm a producer, if I'm making Felipe the sentient dancing microphone and I've got a role in it that, Alison Brie would even remotely fit, I would desperately try to get her in it because I know how talented she is. I know she will elevate the material. She's just that good. Whether she'll be the lead, considered for a big leading lady thing, whether she carries that kind of charisma, that kind of star power, if you will. Because remember, star power and talent are quite often two very different things. Nobody on the planet has more star power than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. But, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, while he's becoming a very serviceable talent, he's not like one of the most talented thespians in the world. I don't know if Alison Brie carries the star power that a lot of people would want to make her an A-list star, but she definitely carries the talent to make her a very sought-after actress, and an actress I would put in anything. Absolutely anything. So anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. All right, let's move on to the next question now. And this one comes to us from Michael Sogalan, who writes, "It's hard to believe that this year marks the 10th anniversary of The Dark Knight. Apparently, there are a few cinemas doing anniversary screenings in February, but the actual anniversary isn't until July. Do you think there will be a bigger anniversary release in the summer?" And yeah, man, talk about feeling old. Talk about feeling old. The Dark Knight is turning 10 this year. It just feels like yesterday that this movie came out. It just felt like just a couple of years ago that we were celebrating Heath Ledger winning the Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars for his role as the Joker a decade ago. Feel old yet? You feeling a little bit creaky in the bones? Man, it's like time flies like that, dude. I mean, I could get real philosophical right now saying, it's weird. Talking about The Dark Knight being 10 years old makes me want to hug my mom. I mean, it's just time flies, dude. So anyway, yes. Now, what got announced, what he's talking about in the question, is it got announced that the movie theater chain Showcase, and I think it's just in like 4 or 5 theaters on the East Coast, has decided to do some 10th anniversary screenings of The Dark Knight. And like, here's the movie web, Dark Knight returning to theaters for 10th anniversary. Okay, so what's odd about this story, though, is that they're talking about releasing this 10th anniversary screenings like in February. So February, March, April, May, June, like 5 months before the actual 10th anniversary. But whatever, 2018 is the 10-year mark for The Dark Knight, even though it's not on the exact month. Fine. So we're going to get The Dark Knight in a few theaters on the East Coast in February. The question becomes, do we think in July, when the actual 10th anniversary is, do we think more theaters across the country are going to want to do and celebrate the 10-year release of The Dark Knight? Here's what I would say to that. Normally, no. Even big, important movies don't necessarily get any kind of a re-release on their anniversary. But The Dark Knight's a little bit different. And the importance of The Dark Knight actually increases as the popularity of the comic book genre increases. Now, in the modern era, okay, I'm not talking back in the original Christopher Reeves Superman movie or stuff like that, but in the modern era, I make the argument that the three most, in no particular order, the three most important comic book movies we've had are, in no order, Avengers, Dark Knight, and the original X-Men film. And without going into it all again, the reason I put the original X-Men film is that is because producers of the Batman Begins and Dark Knight movies and over at Marvel all acknowledge that it was the first X-Men movie that made all these filmmakers and studios realize we can do these types of movies now. And that's why that movie is so important. So to me, the three most important comic book films we've had so far are the original X-Men, Dark Knight, and Avengers. For original X-Men, because it really kicked off the modern era of the comic book film. The Dark Knight, because The Dark Knight showed how high quality a comic book movie can be. Avengers, because it showed you can make a comic book movie with great quality and be one of the most successful box office films of all time. Each one of those three films carries a very specific thing. The Dark Knight, without exception. Since comic book movies now are like the most celebrated and the most successful genre, and it only continues to be that way, it seems to me that the importance of those films, in this particular case, The Dark Knight, becomes even more important. With that in mind, I think there are going to be a number of theater chains. I think an AMC, I think a Regal, I think Showcase, I think Cinemark. I think there are a number of theater chains that come July are going to want to jump on that celebration bandwagon to celebrate The Dark Knight and put it out. Now, will it get a nationwide release? I don't know about that. Will it get like a 2-week run in theaters? No, I don't think so. Probably, though, you're going to see, I believe you're going to see a number of theaters do like a one-night celebration in July of the 10th anniversary of The Dark Knight, and it'll probably be in a lot more theaters than just 4 or 5 on the East Coast. So that's what I think is going to come out of this. But what do you guys think? Jump down in the comments section. Let me know what your thoughts are. All right. We move on now to the last emailed in question today. And the last emailed in question today comes to us from another one of my Patreon supporters, Kevin. First of all, thank you, Kevin, for being a Patreon supporter. Just watched the new Tomb Raider trailer, and I'm feeling good that the video game movie Jinx will soon be no more. Alicia Vikander looks totally badass, but not overly sexualized as in previous incarnations. I'm always impressed with Walton Goggins' versatility. Elements in the trailer look like they're ripped straight from the game, fingers and toes firmly crossed. Okay, so for those of you guys who might have missed it and what Kevin's talking about, yesterday, a brand new trailer for Tomb Raider dropped. Now, I actually quite liked the first trailer. I thought the first trailer set a really nice tone for it. But I'll be honest with you. This second trailer didn't really move it for me. This second trailer didn't... Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think it was a bad trailer. Don't twist my words here. I'm not saying that I think the new Tomb Raider movie is or the new Tomb Raider trailer is a bad trailer. I'm not saying that. But I was looking for something more out of the second trailer. Like the first trailer, you're just giving us a glimpse, you're giving us a sense of the tone, that's great. But the second trailer is when I really want you to punch me in the face. You know what I mean? The second trailer is the one that I want to see and go, oh my God, I gotta see this movie. I gotta see this movie. And I'll be honest with you, this trailer didn't really do it for me. It didn't. Now, that doesn't mean the movie's not going to be spectacular. It very well may be spectacular. Maybe it'll suck. Maybe it'll be spectacular. It's just a trailer we're talking about. But I don't know that this newest trailer for Tomb Raider is going to move people who aren't that interested in the movie to becoming people who are interested in the movie. I don't know that this trailer is going to do much. And Kevin, you point out, it's like, wow, some stuff in the trailer looked like it was ripped right out of the video game. So did Doom. Remember that? With Carl Urban and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? There were like shots taken right out of the video game, and that is one of the worst video game movies ever made in a genre filled with terrible movies. So I'll be honest with you. While I have mentioned that, yeah, it does look like some of the shots in the trailer look like they're taken right out of the video game, that does nothing for me. Because that doesn't mean anything. Because I've seen lots of video game movies where they take shots or do things that are taken right out of the video game, and it did nothing to save the movie. So that doesn't impress me. It doesn't turn me off, but it doesn't impress me either. So, and now you say, you mentioned also, Kevin, in your email, like, I'm starting to gain hope that Tomb Raider could break the video game jinx. Well, let's be honest here. The video game jinx, the video game genre itself sucks so bad. One great movie is not going to break it. We're at the point now that we need 4 or 5 great video game movies to break the curse, if you will. Because we've had so many failures in a row. Remember, for years, I thought, hey guys, Assassin's Creed and Warcraft are coming. These movies are going to be epically successful, and studios are going to make huge money, and all audiences will love them. And the video game golden era of movies will open up to us. Ah! Like, remember, I said that for years. What happened? I liked Warcraft. I did, but it was not a success by any stretch of the imagination. It did not win over the hearts and minds of a majority of film fans out there. Assassin's Creed just sucked. It's the kind of suckage that's worthy of song. Like, somebody needs to write a song about how bad Assassin's Creed is. That movie just sucked. So much potential. So much potential. So here we are again. This time it's Tomb Raider. Now, one of the things you mentioned that I totally agree with, when you look at Alicia Vikander here, she doesn't look sexy. I mean, look, Alicia Vikander always looks sexy. Let's be honest. But to me, when I look at pictures of her in stills like this one here or in the trailer, the first thing that jumps out to me isn't the word sexy. The first thing that jumps out to me is the word strength. I mean, look at this. Look at the physique on this girl. And you know what? That ain't photoshopped. Have you guys seen those behind the scenes videos showing Alicia Vikander's workout? And like, there's a scene where she's doing pull-ups and the camera's behind her. And on a smaller scale, she's got the back muscularity of a bodybuilder. Like, it's, look it up on YouTube. She's doing these pull-ups, and like, there are muscles in her back that I believe biology students didn't even know existed. She just looks amazing. And when I see her in the trailer, and when I see her in the stills and posters, that's one of the things that impresses me the most, is that the first thing that jumps to my mind is not sexiness, which is what, with Lara Croft, you'd think would be the first temptation, just make her sexy. No, they made her exude strength. And sure, she's attractive, but she exudes strength, both physically and, I believe, emotionally in the trailer. She comes across as a really strong hero. And I think that's important. I think that's good. It didn't do anything to save the trailer for me personally, so I will sit here with you. I will keep my fingers crossed. I will keep my toes crossed that we will actually end up getting a half-decent movie. Who knows? All right, guys. With that out of the way, I'm going to jump over now to our 1-minute commercial break, where I admittedly shamelessly plug the one thing that keeps the lights on around here, which is you guys, my Patreon supporters. So here, check this out, and I'll be back in just 1 minute. For those of you who have followed me for any period of time, you guys know that I made the decision recently to leave the corporate overlords. I no longer wanted to work for corporations. I wanted to be an independent content creator. And the only way I've been able to do that is by the support of my Patreon supporters. So what I would like to do is to ask you guys who watch my shows, who spend any amount of time with me every single month, to consider going over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. There you'll get all the information about what exactly does it mean to be a Patreon supporter of mine? What does being a Patreon supporter do for helping to make sure that shows like this one and all the other shows I do here on my channel can actually be produced? And on top of that, what benefits are there to being a Patreon supporter? And maybe if you guys can check that out, if you decide you want to be one of my Patreon supporters, that would be awesome. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just happy that you guys have decided to be here today and be a fellow movie fan and join us in the conversation. So go and check out the website, see if you want to become a Patreon supporter. And now let's get back. All right, and a special thank you again to all of you guys who are already Patreon supporters of mine. You have no idea how grateful I am. And the rest of you guys should thank them as well, because they are the ones who make this show possible. Thank you so much for that. All right, with that out of the way now, let's go over to the live questions. And by the way, guys, remind everybody in the chat about this. If you have not already sent in a Super Chat live question, no more Super Chat live questions. I will not take any more Super Chat questions that came in after 10:27 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Okay, guys? So with that out of the way, let's jump over to the first question today. And the first one today comes to us from Andrew Gifford, who writes, I think Darth Jar Jar has merit. Makes sense. George wanted Jar Jar to be Yoda's equivalent. Seemingly dumb and insignificant, but is actually the master wizard. He probably abandoned this idea. No, Andrew, I can absolutely guarantee you that was not what George was thinking. George wanted Jar Jar really to be the next R2. He wanted to be the next toy that kids loved and would grow up loving. George had no intention of doing Darth Jar Jar. That was never on his mind. And you know, you can watch special features on the Star Wars prequel DVDs and Blu-rays. And George talking about, this all relies on Jar Jar. Jar Jar's got to work, because the kids are going to get hooked on Jar Jar, and everybody's going to love Jar Jar, and he's going to become the emotional hook for these movies. And he wasn't kidding when he says, it all depends on how Jar Jar goes, because Jar Jar sucked, and that pretty much turned it out for the prequels. But no, George was never thinking he was going to make Darth Jar Jar. That was never part of his plan. Andrew also writes, Saints Vikings, Minneapolis Miracle, Stefan Diggs. I was heartbroken for that, because the Saints outplayed the Vikings. The Saints deserve to win that game. And I feel really bad for Drew Brees. But it was a fluke. Not only was the throw a fluke and the catch was a fluke, but the way the guy missed the tackle when we went right under the guy, that was a fluke. I mean, it was really unfortunate, but it made for an ending to a game that we're going to remember for the rest of our lives. Those of us who are sports fans anyway. Mason Barr writes, just watch The Greatest Showman. It's spectacular. You know, the more I watch The Greatest Showman, the more I like it. It's not a very strong movie per se. Like, the narrative flow isn't great, but the music is amazing, and the music is 80% of the movie. So I quite like The Greatest Showman. I like it a lot, and I like it more and more every time I watch it. TNS93 writes, do you think Snyder gets a bad rap for the DCEU? No, Snyder gets what Snyder deserves. Look, the facts are the facts. I loved Man of Steel, but the facts are a real big number of people did not. I like Batman versus Superman, but the reality is a lot of people did not. And he's got to own that. Which is why I really wonder, when people go, and this is the part that makes me wonder the most, when people want to say, oh, if they just did Snyder's vision of Justice League, it would have worked out great. Based on what? He did Man of Steel, and a ton of people didn't like it. Even though it's in my personal top 10 favorite comic book movies of all time list, tons of people didn't like it. He put out Justice League, tons of people didn't like it. I don't care if he did. Look, I feel very confident. I don't know, this is just opinion. I feel very confident that the version of Justice League we got in theaters was probably better than the version we would have got from Snyder. And I'm a Zack Snyder fan. And I'm part of me is really quite happy that Snyder's not going to be doing DCU movies anymore, because that means Zack Snyder can now go flex his creative muscles in other projects. And I'm excited to see whatever Zack Snyder does next. I think it's great. But for whatever reason, Zack Snyder did not click with the DCEU. I mean, you can be a fanboy and stick your head in the sand and deny it if you want, but the numbers are there. The facts are the facts. He made something I loved, but that doesn't mean I stick my head in the sand and deny that a lot of people didn't. So, I mean, it just is what it is. So, no, I don't think he gets a bad rap for it. I think he gets what he gets from it, and that's just kind of my thoughts on it. Director Donovan writes, how long until my Baltimore Ravens are good again? Not long. Not long. Look, I think the Ravens, they lost some heartbreakers this year. And as long as you got a Harbaugh coach, they are always The Baltimore Ravens, to me, are always a scary, scary team. And I always think they're just one or two steps away from being one of the elite teams every single year. I really do. So I think next year they're going to be quite solid. Orange Hand writes, people often say it's just fiction in response to film/show criticism, but given the influence art has on our lives and culture, can works of fiction ever really be completely divorced from reality? No, because here's the thing. This is the beautiful thing about art, and in particular movies, but art in general. The movies to me, and this is why movies are so important to me, and I'm not going to go into my full spiel on this, but the movies to me are so important because they are the ultimate expression of us as a species expressing our hopes, our fears, our dreams, our aspirations. It is a window into how our world is and how we wish our world would be and what we fear our world could become. Art, and in particular the magic of the movies, is the ultimate expression of our natural inclination as a species to be storytellers. Whether you go back to the earliest days of our species, and whether it's drawings on a cave wall, stories told around a campfire passed down from generation to generation, the invention of the printing press so we could share the stories. Movies are the ultimate expression of that genetic need of us as a species to tell our stories. And fiction is a part of that. Fiction is a part of expressing what our world is, what our world could be, what we wish our world was, what we fear our world could become. It's all of those things. Now, I don't want to wax too poetic on it, but I absolutely agree with you, Orange Hand. The works of fiction are important. They are. Movies are important. Like, they're not as important as you know, the problem of hunger in third world nations. No, it's not as important as that. But make no mistake, storytelling is a genetic imperative of us as a species, almost as much as breeding. And the power of stories is palatable. And so, yeah, I think art is very important. I really do. I will always think art and movies are really important. Siobhan Dixit writes, after Avengers 4, would you like to see Marvel recast the original members like Tony, Cap, etc., or just use current roster of characters like Strange, Ant-Man, Panther, and phase out the older characters? I can't even answer that, Siobhan, because we're 5 movies away from that. Who knows what will be best? Come then. We still have Avengers 3, we still have Ant-Man, we still have Black Panther, we still have Captain Marvel, and then we've got Avengers 4. Like, we're 5 movies away from that happening. So, at this point, I'm not even going to speculate. What do I think they should do with casting after Avengers 4? It's 5 movies away! I have no idea! Where's the MCU going to be 5 movies from now? Who are going to be the major players 5 movies from now? Will we be tired of certain characters 5 movies from now? Or will our hunger be as intense as ever 5 movies from now for these actors to play these roles? It's simply far too soon to tell at this point. So ask me when we're 2 movies away from Avengers 4. Maybe then we'll have a clearer picture. But at this point, I think it's way too soon to even bother speculating about that at this point. But it is the MCU. We love talking about the MCU. I just think it's far too early to start engaging in those types of conversations. All right. We go next to Greg Cybulski, who writes, I look forward to your shows every day. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for all the great work you do, John. And Brady is the GOAT. Brady is the GOAT. And I put up a quote on my social media the other day of a quote from ESPN that says, Brady is not just the GOAT. He's the super GOAT. He's the Kal-El GOAT. I love that line from ESPN. I put it up on my social media the other day. Check that out. All right, next one comes to us from Spencer Smothers, who writes, who's your pick for this weekend's NFL games? I'm going to go Philadelphia Eagles and New England Patriots. I think that's the safe bet. I wouldn't bet too hard against Minnesota Vikings, though. They are an impressive team from top to bottom. But right now, I think people are really underestimating Foles. That's Philadelphia's quarterback. I think people really underestimate him. And I think he might be the difference in that game. So I'm gonna go out on a limb right now and say, even though I won't be surprised if Vikings win, I'm going to say it's going to be a Philadelphia-New England Super Bowl. All right. Orange Hand writes, Any food choices, example pizza toppings, that you don't understand the appeal of? P.S. Are you a baseball fan? Well, I am not a baseball fan. I don't even think baseball is a sport. I think baseball is a game. I think it's a very skill-required game. But any more than I don't think chess is a sport. I think chess is a game. I don't even consider baseball a sport. I mean, to be honest with you. And everybody's screaming at their screens at me right now. That's fine. But I mean, I'll cheer when the Toronto Blue Jays go to the World Series, sure, yeah. But I'm not gonna, and I'll watch the playoffs because I like playoffs in almost any sports. So I'll watch baseball playoffs because I think there's some inherent drama there. But no, I'm not a big baseball fan. Food toppings that people pineapple. I don't get it, especially on pizza. I do not understand anybody's enjoyment or desire to put pineapple on pizza. I'll never get it. I don't get it now. I won't get it tomorrow. So that's just my thought on that. Sujith writes, hey, John, greetings from India. Thank you so much. In your opinion, what are the characteristics of a good sci-fi movie? Thanks. I love the show. Keep up the good work. Well, I mean, Sujith, that's a really in-depth discussion and question to do. That's a half hour to an hour-long discussion. Really, at the bottom line, characteristics of a good sci-fi movie are the same as characteristics of any good movie. Which are, you have compelling characters, give us a compelling antagonist, give us a creative story, have good pace, good cadence, and a good narrative flow. You put those in a comedy, you put those in a horror, you put those in a sci-fi movie, you put those in a drama, you've got the building blocks for an essentially good film. Lose out on those things, and you're hurting. So really, I think the basic fundamental building blocks of what makes a good sci-fi movie are actually quite similar, if not identical, to the fundamental building blocks of what makes any good movie. So that's how I would go there. Into the specifics of sci-fi, again, that's a much longer discussion. But like good characters, good antagonist, good narrative flow, good pace and cadence. These are all things that are really good building blocks for any genre of movie, and I think sci-fi is no exception to that. All right, we move on now to Stig100900, who writes, with Sundance starting this week, what do you think of the festival? Have you been? Would you like to? I have not been to Sundance. I really don't have any desire to go to Sundance. Yeah. I've had the opportunity to go to Sundance several times, especially when I was with AMC. I had the opportunity to go to Sundance several times. I usually declined. Look, here's the thing. I generally tend to put, because my audience is, generally speaking, the wide release major motion picture audience. That's my audience. And so I need to speak to that audience more prevalently. That's why, to me, film festivals like the Toronto International Film Festival would be a more relevant film festival for me to be at, because most of the films that are playing there, or at least a good chunk of the films that are playing there, are going to be major wide release films. A hell of a lot of the films that play at Sundance, while some excellent films come out of Sundance, the majority of the films at Sundance are never going to be wide-release theatrical films. So do I want to spend, I usually have to ask myself this from a professional point of view, do I want to spend 5, 6, 7 days traveling to another country, being away from my studio, being away from my ability to do my shows and connect with my audience? Is all that worth it to be at that particular festival? And the answer to that is probably no. A Toronto International Film Festival, Cannes maybe, but something like Sundance, it just doesn't make sense for me. Pardon me. I know a lot of my colleagues absolutely love going to Sundance. Absolutely love it. And from what I understand, it's a really good time to be there. But it's not really it's not a festival that's geared to me per se. All right. Gary Del Abate writes, been a fan for 9 years. Favorite monkey movie? Favorite monkey movie? Any Which Way But Loose? That's a pretty good one. The original King Kong. The second Planet of the Apes movie, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, that could be another good one. I'd have to think about it, but there's several really good monkey movies when you mention it, when you think about it. Siobhan Dixit writes, but John, Could you change the timing for the John Campea live show? 4 p.m. is kind of late in the day. Perhaps before the actual show, like 10 a.m. No, I think an evening show is what would work best. And I want it far enough away from the John Campea show. Like the John Campea show, I think I'd like to spread it out through the day to give more people an opportunity. And I think doing it later in the day gives more people an opportunity to get home from work or get home from school and then participate in it. And who knows, maybe I'll do it and it won't work at that time, but I would really like to separate it in a time-wise from the John Campea show. Because, like, for instance, if I did the John Campea show at 8, and then I had to rush to get ready to do the John Campea live show at just 2 hours later, and then on a Tuesday, just 2 hours after I'm done that, doing Star Wars Talk Tuesday, it's too much packed into too short of a period of time. So I think I like the idea of spreading it out. Not one of the same three guys, Super Chat writes, keep up the great work. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Luis Garza 1000 writes, what wins the box office, Incredibles 2 or Deadpool 2? I'm going to say Deadpool 2 at this point. I don't think Incredibles will be $1 billion film. But then again, if Incredibles comes out and it's 100% Rotten Tomatoes movie and everybody's jumping on board with it, it could nudge out Deadpool 2. My initial early guess will be Deadpool 2, but I might change that guess a little bit later. Jay Solars 2 writes, hey John, big fan. Have you watched season 1 and 2 of Man in the High Castle on Amazon Prime? Excited for season 3 coming soon. Man in the High Castle is a show I have been meaning to watch for a couple of years now. I keep hearing people talk about it. I've got friends of mine who really like it, and I keep meaning to sit down and binge watch it sometime, but I have never gotten around to doing it. Maybe I will get some time to binge season 1 and 2 and get ready for season 3. So I will keep my eyes open for that. Thanks for bringing that up. Call of Duty Zombies writes, hey John, love the show. Thank you so much. There's a show that isn't the same without you. Do you think if Marvel uses Abomination again in the future movie, they'll change the look of him like they did for Hulk? Probably. They'll probably evolve his look a little bit. I have been dying for them to use Abomination again. I have been dying for them to use Abomination. I think Abomination is a perfect villain you can bring back because as the stakes get higher, what character, unless you downpower Hulk a bit, which it feels like they did a little bit in Thor Ragnarok, which I don't like. That's one of the things I didn't like about Thor Ragnarok. It feels like they powered down the Hulk a little bit. But if you're trying to find like characters who could actually go toe-to-toe with Hulk, you got one, Abomination. Remember, he did not die in that last movie he's in. He's put into a prison. In one of the Marvel shorts, they confirmed he's in a prison. So I think Abomination would be a great character to bring back. And I do think they would probably change his design a little bit. Not massively, but they probably just evolve his look a little bit. I think that would be a great call. All right. Sujith writes, do you think Matt Reeves is going for the film noir style detective story for Batman? Well, who knows at this point? I mean, it's been a year since they announced that he was doing the movie. And apparently there's still no finished script. How you go a year without having a finished script is beyond me. I mean, Joss Whedon wrote the script to Cabin in the Woods on a weekend. I'm not saying that every script should be rushed like that, but it's been a year. So, I don't know. Maybe he'll go for it. I mean, he's dropped suggestions that he will. I think it'd be interesting if he did. I'm totally fine if he doesn't. Totally good if he does. But let's see what he does. I think there's a chance he will. Jacob Vanco writes, you say you don't want Star Wars to tell more backstories, but what about way backstory set a couple of thousand years before the Battle of Yavin? I'd love to see that. Well, no, look, let me be very clear. I just don't want backstories of existing characters, of stories that we're already plugged into. I don't want to see a young Yoda movie. I'll go see it if it comes out because it's Star Wars, obviously. But if I had it up to me, I don't want a young Yoda movie. I don't want a young Jabba movie. I don't want a younger Boba Fett movie. Now, that doesn't mean we can't go back in time, but go back in time enough time that we're telling completely new stories with new characters and new environments. Do that. So yes, I'm totally fine with going back to Old Republic or going back even 100 years or going back 500 years. If you want to go that way, or if you want to go forward, whatever, that's cool too. I just don't want more prequels, per se. You know what I mean? So yes, I'm totally with you, Jacob. I'm fine with doing stories that are backwards in time, just not stories that are prequels to the existing stories we already have. That's my point. So you and I are on the same page there, Jacob. All right, Starman writes, my favorite movie of all time. Great. I don't know what movie you're talking about, but whatever it is, it's your favorite movie of all time. Good to hear it. All right, Adam K writes, where'd Adam K go? Adam K writes, have you seen Wonder? If so, thoughts? Yes, I finally got around to watching Wonder. Took me forever. Adored it. Just adored it. I would not nominate for Best Film of the Year, but there are several films I really like this year that I wouldn't necessarily nominate for Best Film of the Year. Wonder wouldn't get one of my nomination positions, but I adored the. It's a very special movie. It's a type of movie that you're watching and you're just. It feels weird. It feels like you're at home watching it. It's a wonderful little movie, and I think, no pun intended, I think if a lot of you haven't seen Wonder yet, give it a shot because it's really quite a special little film. Kedar Padgur writes, could franchises like Wildstorm work for DC? Look, I said this before, I'll say it again. Anything can work. This is where Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone came from. Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone came from somebody asking me the same question years ago. Can this work? And I said, if you have a good script with a good story, good characters, good director, blah, 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 anything, even a movie about Felipe, the sentient dancing microphone, can be a good movie. If you can make a movie about Legos a good movie, you can make anything work. Anything can work. Then it just becomes a question about, what kind of marketing challenges would it face? Does it already have recognizable IP? Does it have too much competition? These are all different questions, but to just give a short answer, yes, it could work. It could completely fail and crash and burn too, but it can work in the sense that just about anything can work if done right, and a Wildstorm would be no exception. Devontae Brown writes, you mentioned before, but you really think Stephen Amell is mad for your honest opinion? Seems odd. He didn't seem like that kind of guy. Maybe he's better now. Well, look, for those who know what he's talking about, Stephen Amell, who I am a big fan of Stephen Amell. I think that dude is really quite talented, and he gets better and better. As any good actor does, he gets better and better every year. And I'm really bummed out that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 turned out to be a bad movie, and that he was in it, because I think that's hurt his movie career, unfortunately. He was really dealt a losing hand with that movie. And I was so excited that he got cast in it. And Stephen Amell, by the way, true story. This is how cool of a guy he is. All right. It was Anne's birthday. And I put this up on my YouTube channel ages ago, or my Facebook page, wherever. It was Anne's birthday. Anne was also a big fan of Arrow. And I wrote to Stephen to say, hey, it's my wife's birthday. Maybe if you drop her a quick note in Twitter or something, just say happy birthday, and she would love it. Understanding that he's very, very busy and that he probably wouldn't have time to. But you know what he did? He was on set recording Arrow. Went into his trailer, still in his Arrow makeup and everything. He was all disheveled and stuff like that because he was doing some shots. TV show shots, not shots. So he was looking disheveled because he was doing a scene in the movie, had the black eye makeup on, all kind of stuff. Runs into his trailer, doesn't send Anne a note. He records a video for Anne, wishing Anne a happy birthday and all that kind of stuff. Who does that? Who does that? A guy like Stephen Amell does. And then you see him go and do stuff in the WWE. He's an undefeated WWE wrestler, by the way. He's 1-0. Super high quality guy. And I would chat back and forth with him a little bit here and there on Twitter, on email, and things like that. And you guys know I had him on my show, voice-wise, once or twice, and he came into my studio to do an Arrow chat with me. But once I ditched the show, because I did not and here's the thing, I ditched Arrow, and one of the things I was really upset with Arrow about was you got this star, Stephen Amell, who's so good. And I just did not think the writers were doing justice for the show. I thought the writers were making some very questionable decisions. I did not like the way they handled the Laura Lance character, the Captain Buckles thing. I thought that was terrible, all that kind of stuff. And eventually I gave up on the show and I left I left the show as a viewer. And after that, Stephen Amell didn't follow me on Twitter anymore. Or not that I was writing him and he just was ignoring me, but he stopped, you know, writing to me at all. And he stopped following me on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Now, I have never held that against him. Because on one hand, when you think about it, like he was kind enough to call into my Arrow after show. He was kind enough to take an evening out of his life to come into my studio, to sit down with us in person and do a show talking about Arrow with us. And then later I bash the show and I leave the show. Now, I had no choice because my first commitment is to you guys, my viewers. My first priority is to always be honest with you guys, my viewers. And it doesn't matter if I thought I was developing a nice little rapport with Stephen Amell. Doesn't matter that I'm a big fan of his. Doesn't matter that he came into my studio. I have to be honest with my audience. And I have to always wear my honest opinions on my sleeve. Otherwise, why would you guys bother watching me? It doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with the things I say. What is absolutely important is that you know 100% for certain when I say something, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but it is what I believe. And that's unshakable. That is, without question, that is non-negotiable. I have to be honest with my viewers about my opinion about the media that I'm consuming and the media I'm watching. Otherwise, what's the point? What's the point otherwise? So yeah, I could have gone, oh gosh, I got Stephen Amell coming on my shows and he tweets out things that I do and stuff like that. Oh, I better just keep saying I like Arrow. But no, that is not what I do. That's not how I do things. I will always, maybe I'm right sometimes, maybe I'm wrong sometimes, but I will always be honest with you guys, my viewers. Always will be, no matter what. And so, even though I felt bad about it, I thought Arrow, the TV show, took a massive turn for the worst. Not because of Steven, but because of the writers. And so I had to be honest about it. And as a viewer, I didn't want to watch the show anymore. So to you guys, I was honest about it. Say, I hate what they've done with several things in the show, and I've stopped watching. And I don't blame Stephen Amell one little bit for deciding, well, then, you know, I'm not going to bother following this guy on Twitter anymore. I'm not going to bother. Like, that's of course not. That's understandable. It's not like he and I were best friends and he ditched our friendship. No, it wasn't like that at all. He was a star. I'm a media pundit, and we had a good rapport, but that's all it was. It's not like we were buddies and hanging out having beers at Barney's Beanery every other night. It wasn't anything like that. And so he stopped following me. I never held that against him at all. I don't think anybody should. That's understandable. So, yeah, it's not like he's not shallow. He's actually a really good guy who has been very giving. He does great charity work. He's just a really top-notch, good, solid guy and a tremendous talent. But I don't get the impression that, like, the way you formed the question, Devontae, it's like, I said I didn't like his show, so he had a temper tantrum. No. It's nothing like that at all. He's a really good, talented guy, very giving, super generous with his time, and very talented. And I continue to this day to be a big fan of his. Doesn't matter that I turned him off of following me on Twitter, whatever. None of that matters. I'm still a fan of his. I think he's great. Regardless of whether or not I think the writers of his show do justice to his talent, I think he's great. So, anyway, there's that. Let's see. Just 2 questions left. The other black guy writes, what's the most underappreciated job in film? There are a lot of underappreciated jobs in film because a lot of times a movie being great has nothing to do with how good the actors were. But to the average movie-going audience, sometimes that's all we see. All we see is, did we love the actors in it? And that's all we see. When really, a lot of times, movies are great regardless, like despite the actors, or regardless of the actors. But that's who we see on screen, so that's what we associate. Cinematographers are very undervalued. And it seems odd to say it, but it's true. Writers are undervalued. Like writers, I mean, You can make a bad movie from a good script. It's almost impossible to make a good movie from a bad script, though. You can make a bad movie from a good script. It's almost impossible to make a good movie from a bad script. And writers are just people that the audience doesn't see. So that's probably, I would rank that pretty high, but there's lots of them. From lighting people, cinematographers, costume design. There's so many underappreciated jobs in the business. That's one of the reasons why I love the Oscars so much, is because it brings and it shines the light on a lot of these other roles as well. All right, the last question of the day comes to us from Ezequiel Fuentes Jr., who writes, big fan, John. Thank you so much. What would you say to a Batman trilogy based on the Arkham games? Yeah, sure. I'd be down. Look, I'm down from a Batman trilogy based on anything. You want to do a Batman trilogy based on Injustice? Great. You want to do a Batman trilogy based on The Court of Owls? Great. You want to do a Batman trilogy based on No Man's Land? Great. You want to do a Batman trilogy based on the Arkham games? Sure. Why not? It all comes down to, it could be great, it could be awful. It all depends on how it's executed. That's what it's really all about. And, but if they did it, sure. Yeah, I'd go, yeah, okay, I'm down for that. I'm down for that. And let's see how it turns out. All right, guys, that will do it for me today for this installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining me on this Friday. Once again, I want to remind you guys that starting on Monday, the John Campea Show will be at 8 a.m. Now, on Saturdays and Sundays, it's still going to be the regular time. I usually do it at 9 or 10 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, depending on what time I decide to wake up in the morning. Because it's the weekends, I take a little bit of liberty with when I want to get out of bed and do some work. I do not take weekends off. Yes, I do work 7 days a week. Okay, anyway. But on Monday, show starts at 8 a.m. And the first episode of what I'm tentatively calling John Campea Live. By the way, guys, if you have a better idea for a title, send me the title. Send me your ideas for a name for a title for that show. That's going to be all live questions every day. I think that's going to be great. And by the way, guys, if you're planning on joining me for that show, I'm going to give preference to people who send in comments or questions about today's or this week's movie news items. So I'll be more inclined to take your question if you send in a question, like if, you know, a Tomb Raider trailer drops, if you want to make a comment or a point about the Tomb Raider trailer, you'll more likely have your question picked so we can keep it more relevant. I'll take other questions too, but I'm going to be more leaning towards questions about today's stories or stories that happened this week and your thoughts, your opinions, your questions about those. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Also, guys, want to remind you right now, a little bit later today, later this afternoon, I think it's going to be at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, is the Weekly Hero, where we sum up and talk about everything going on in the world of superheroes. Going to want to talk about Black Lightning, because Black Lightning debuted on CW, and I really enjoyed that. And a little bit later today is my new movie review of the new Gerard Butler film, Den of Thieves. Actually, not bad. But anyway, I'll go more into that a little bit later. So, guys, that will do it for me for today. Guys, make sure, if you're not a subscriber to my YouTube channel yet, click that subscribe button, become a subscriber. Click the thumbs up button on this video. Leave a comment or a thought in the comments section below. I want to hear your thoughts. And make sure you're following me on social media, on Facebook or Twitter, or on Instagram, just at John Campea. That'll do it for me, guys. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.